Hey everybody, welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. I am so excited about this book, First Intelligence, Using the Science and Spirit of Intuition by Simone Wright. I have to say this is the best book I've read on intuition. I just absolutely love it, love it, love it. And I'm really excited, Simone, to have you here. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for the props. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
I read a lot of books on intuition, and I've been described as intuitive, which I usually go, "Oh yeah, thanks." What the heck does that even mean? You know
Yeah.
what? You know what? Some people are like, "You're blankety blank," and then you really don't even know what it means, but you kind of nod your head and going, "Thanks." I
Yeah. I think,
think. I
yeah.
think. But, being an intuitive person, I feel like I know a fair amount about what it means to be intuitive. But what your book did for me is it provided a structure to give me a sense of the full definition of intuition, which is by far the best definition that I've seen of intuition.
Thank you.
And then at the end, it was, again, one of the best how-to guides. I mean, there are things I've been doing, I've been an intuitive my entire life. And there are things that were new for me. And I kept on thinking, when I was in this point where I was learning these skills, I wish I would have had these steps that you have in the back of your book, because they're so thorough and they're so well explained. So thank you. This is a blessing to have this book here with me.
You're welcome. I'm going to get all teary. Thank you.
Oh,
My heart. It touches my heart because
oh,
it's
good.
certainly my passion and yeah, to knock the mystery off of it when it's so important for all of us to know how to use it is really important to me. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's funny because people are always saying, "Oh, you're so," what does it even mean? And when I looked at Google and I figured out what was the first thing that people wanted to know, defining intuition, because I think
Mhm.
we don't really know what it means. How do you define intuition, and how is someone classified as an intuitive from your perspective?
Well, boy, it's a pretty broad, it's pretty broad, but from my perspective, intuition is the ability to use our broader awareness to to guide our life in beneficial ways, to see ahead of the curve, to come up with innovative ideas, to sense things deeply so that we know how to communicate at a certain moment, that we know what solutions are going to benefit us. A lot of people's misconception about intuition is that it's some psychic superpower
Yeah.
and it's limited to people who are gifted or blessed. And it's not. It's a natural intelligence that we all possess that allows us to take action based on our highest good, based on our desire to evolve and become bigger, better people. And it serves all of us uniquely and individually, and is specific to each of us. But it's very grounded and it's very practical, and
Mm-hmm.
it's active for all of us anytime we want it if we just know how to listen to it.
So it's not, and I think that that's what the difference is, because when people describe intuition to me, it really is looped into being psychic, like being able to see things that aren't there, or talk to dead people, or all these different things that various gifts that people have.
Yeah.
It's different than that. Then you're saying that it's different than being a psychic. How is it different?
Well, psychic ability is certainly a small part of it, because people who are really intuitive can sort of see ahead, like powerful intuitive business people like Richard Branson, Oprah Winfrey, Warren Buffett. They see things ahead of time and take action based on what they see. So psychic ability is a part of it, but you can be intuitive without being psychic.
What's that mean? You can be intuitive without being psychic. So what does that mean?
Well, so intuitive, say if I'm using my intuition in my business, I kind of get a feeling, a sensation about what's going to best serve me in this moment to take action. But it doesn't necessarily mean I have any sort of psychic ability to see what's going to happen 6 months down the road. You
Uh,
know, Psychic ability is sort of the idea to be able to see and project into the future, which
uh,
which really, when you're thinking about things on a grander scheme and how it serves our life, is, we don't really need that.
right.
It's great to be able to talk to the dead if you're a medium and that's your life focus, but you don't need that in order to serve your business, whereas intuition can serve all of us.
Right. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling like the intuition, the way that you're describing, is like it just has practical benefits. Like you said, it's our first intelligence. It's not
Yeah.
some woo-woo out there concept.
No.
It's something, and then one of the things that seems like the people get confused with is how is it different than instincts?
Well, instinct as well is a part of our intuitive intelligence. You know, we've all heard of gut instinct.
Yeah.
But instinct, every single organism on the planet has instinct. And that is a basic intelligence that serves our desire to survive, to live. It keeps our body intact. But it doesn't have wisdom. It can't guide us to what we want to create. It just says, how do I keep this unit alive?
Right.
And so our gut instinct as a part of our intuition serves that, but there are other levels in the intuitive conversation that are more evolved, that are more sophisticated, and that can serve us based on what we want to see in our environment, as opposed to just keeping our body alive.
Yes, and that's one of the things that I greatly appreciated about the very beginning of your book, First Intelligence, and when you talk about that. And it's the first time that I ever had someone define it. In fact, I hear some people say, it's all about what's in your gut. It's all about what's in your heart. It's all about what's in your third eye. It's all about connecting to something higher. I'm like, what is this, first of all, that everything is about?
Yes.
And it's really these four different things. And what I love that you did in the book, that my own experience feels is true, is that these four intelligence are all part of intuition. I mean, that's the umbrella that all these things fit under.
Absolutely. And if you limit it to just one, then you obliterate the potential for information and guidance to come to you in any other way.
That's absolutely right. I love that. That's so true. Because I think because I talked to someone who is a Zen Buddhist, and I don't know if this was just her practice or generally, so, I don't have any issues with Zen Buddhists or anything, but she said, it's all in your gut. You want to navigate life through your gut. And I just thought, well, what about your heart? Like, where does that come in? Or where does that come in? So or some people who it's like, it's all about following your heart, which I agree. Like, I have no problems with any of these, but I think it's all four of the intelligence that you mentioned in your book.
Right. And what I encourage people to do in any aspect of their life is to never diminish any part of who you are. People always think, well, if I'm going to be intuitive, I've got to go to a monastery and learn how to meditate and become a vegetarian. I'm like, no. If you're an auto mechanic and you drink beer and eat steak, your intuition will still work for you. You don't have to diminish any part of you.
Right.
So to diminish your heart for the sake of your gut causes problems, because your gut is going to serve you at different times. Your heart is going to serve you when you and I are having a heart-to-heart conversation right now. We're not reading text. We're not being logical or linear. We're connecting through the heart.
Right.
It's serving us right now. Our third eye, our psychic ability, our visionary power, which is the part that I like to play with the most, is that part up in the brain. That's going to serve us when we're wanting to come up with new ideas, how to push my business forward, how do I heal myself. So all four of them serve us at different times. So we need to embrace them all and say, all right, which one is going to work for me today?
Yeah, what the visual image that popped into my mind when you were saying that is, I just think of a toolbox, right? You have a hammer, you have, screwdriver, you have a wrench. You don't necessarily, you use them for a particular function. You wouldn't use a hammer every single time, although I've seen other people try to do that.
Yeah. It tends not to work very well.
I know. Okay, so let's actually ground this into some real life scenarios. So I know that you've worked a lot with the police department and finding missing children, looking at crime investigation. So how would someone use their gut, their heart, their third eye, and above to kind of give us a couple examples if you can? I know probably some of this stuff is confidential, but can you give us some kind of a flavor of what that would look like in practice?
Sure. The book came out of a program that I developed for law enforcement up in Canada. I trained cops how to use their intuition, and which was groundbreaking. And if I had thought about it seriously, I would have never thrown myself into that. But stuff just happens.
Yeah.
And in a room full of skeptics, because cops are skeptical.
Yes.
And I said, how many of you in this room have had an instant on the job where in your gut you just knew there was a bad guy behind a certain wall? How many of you have known when you were having a conversation with a victim or a witness that somehow they weren't able to communicate what you really needed to hear? Or how many of you sort of had a vision or an idea in your mind about a different way to approach a crime? And every hand in the room went up.
Yes.
And I said, look around the room. And they all looked around the room. And I said, so listen, I'm not teaching you something that you don't already know how to do. I'm just teaching you how to do it more clearly. So it's, it happens for all of law enforcement in different ways, but it can be as simple as, I just know there's a guy with a gun behind that wall. So I'm either going to hold my team back, or I'm going to wait for backup, or I'm going to take a different approach. Or, when communicating and talking with a victim, they'll know how to approach a question more deeply and more intimately so that they can get the information that they want. And that comes from that heart-based intuition that says, okay, I need to ask a different question to get the information I want. And it was interesting to see all the light bulbs go on in the room with the cops.
Yeah.
And you could see their defenses drop. And that's what I love to be able to teach people, is to say, this isn't magic. You've all got it. It's all working. I live in Los Angeles, and my traffic intuition works all the time.
That's fantastic, meaning you know which roads to take.
I'll hear turn left, or I'll hear turn right, or I'll hear wait. And when I ignore it, invariably there's a traffic jam. And everybody I've talked to, I've said, how many of you have had traffic intuition, where you hear that little voice that says left, and everybody puts their hand up. So that's how it, to use it as simply as that. And then you say, okay, I've had those experiences. Now, how do I broaden it so I can use it to guide me to creating more money, or improving my health, or reducing my confusion about which direction to take?
I was playing around with that, using my intuition for traffic. And I think the hardest thing when that happens is you're feeling like, oh, that's just me imagining it.
Yep.
Or hearing something, following it, and then I literally was in a dead end and thought, well, intuition, you messed me up. So I guess I must not be intuitive today. How do you explain those two scenarios?
Well, let's take the last scenario, for example, first. So your intuition said turn left, and you ended up in a dead end.
Right.
Well, but you don't know what that detour and dead end and 5 minutes that it took you to navigate through that helped you avoid moving forward.
That's a good point. I don't.
So you have to realize that intuition is also going to tell you when not to take action, when not to move forward. It's going to create things that are going to keep you safe. So, okay, I hit a roadblock. What did it prevent me from bumping into? So don't look at it as a failure. Ask yourself that question.
Yeah. Interesting.
And then what was the first part of the question?
The first one is that we don't trust our intuition. So I was driving, and I was just going with whatever I heard in my head, and I just followed it, and it was fascinating. But a lot of us are like, well, I don't. I hear millions of stories like, my gut feeling about that guy was he just wasn't right for you, anyways, right? Well, and but you think, well, I'm not going to act on it, or maybe my gut was wrong, or how does one trust those kind of feelings?
Well, first of all, it's practice. You need to be able to, and I encourage people to look forward to screwing up, because that's going to teach you how to tell the difference.
Yeah.
When you've ignored it and you bumped into an obstacle, or you followed it and you had a success, because it's like learning to speak a language. You have to speak it and screw it up to get it correct.
Right.
But realize too, part of the precision of the intuitive process is asking yourself, what was my level of energy when I asked the question, when I engaged with my intuition? Did I have really high hopes? Did I have high expectations? Was I coming from a place of, I really want this to be right? Because if you don't engage in the conversation on a platform of peace, of calm, coherent, heart-based stillness, you're going to get static, you're going to get distortion. And so that's when you're going to bump into those situations when you're like, dang it, I was convinced that my intuition was right.
Right, but you came from a wanting it to be true, or an egoic place, and not from that peaceful place that you mentioned, which is the first step that you have in your book, First Intelligence, is to be, which I never, like I said, I didn't even know. I all I know is what I've been told before is to get grounded, to make sure that your information is grounded, and to connect up to heaven, all this other mishmash. But I think the key thing is to be peaceful, because then you're coming from an intentional place that is going to be a place of truth, I think, versus wanting it to be true or forcing something that really isn't there to be there.
Right.
So there's a bunch of other steps in here, and I love that. I kept on visualizing you teaching this stuff to a bunch of policemen, which is just, I can't even imagine
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
this was, what this was like. So how did you get them to believe that this is even true and to start using this stuff?
Well, the way I got into that environment was a law enforcement friend of mine who's a police detective and has been for 25 years, knew of my skill set as an intuitive and brought me in on a homicide case. Mm-hmm. And the information that I was able to provide for them, although I wasn't a formal part of the investigation, because no police department is going to admit to bringing somebody like me in, right. The information I was able to provide them assisted them in closing a triple homicide gang hit and getting 3 life sentences.
Wow.
So I had traction, and they were impressed by that.
Right.
So he said, do you want to come and do this for us full time, this psychic stuff? And I'm like, no. But what if I could teach you how to do it? And I had to like pull that back into my mouth, because I thought, how am I going to do this? And so that's how I got into the environment. And this cop friend of mine had a strong reputation in the police department. I had proven myself with this case. And so while they were skeptical, they were kind of like, all right, let's see what this kid can do.
Yeah.
So I wasn't preaching to the choir by any stretch of the imagination, but I had softened them up a little bit by virtue of what I had done with them in this case.
Okay, and is that how you came up with these steps, is through the training that you offer?
Yeah, and just the process of reverse engineering, because this has been it's a skill we've all got, first of all.
Right.
And we're really good at it when we're kids, mm-hmm. and it's trained out of us because we're taught that logic has to be a part of our learning, and we've got to follow patterns, and so it's coached way out of us. So this has always been a skill set, but when it came time to teach the cops, I said, all right, I've got to reverse engineer this. Mm-hmm. I've got to look at what I do when it's successful and when I can find a kid or solve.
Right.
And I've got to look at what I do when it's not. And, the process of writing the book, again, was completely intuitive. I just said, all right, I want the answers to this. This is my goal. And my intuition said, okay, look here, do this, look here, what are you doing now? And when I get my most potent intuitive hits is when I'm out hiking with my dogs or out on the beach.
Yes, love it.
Where I'm not grinding it out, trying to figure it out. And, Einstein, Steve Jobs, all of the superstars got their ideas while they were out doing stuff they loved, mm-hmm. not while they were racking their brain. Mm-hmm. And so it gradually sort of came to me through an intuitive process. So I say, spend more time having fun and doing the things that you love, and your intuition is going to explode. Mm. People think...
So I'm trying to visualize what that would be like. So you would walk out saying, like, your intuition led you here, and then you would walk out, and what were the things that... Give me a couple examples of a walk and what you've realized as a result of having fun.
So I'm out walking my dog, and my dog is really cute and sweet, and she's chewing a stick or she's watching a bug, and I'll get it's a hit. I call it a hit, mm-hmm. and it's call Huffington Post or send I'm going to be writing for Huffington Post right now. That came as a hit the other day. It's like I had just written an article. It said send it to Huffington Post. I'm like, okay. So I got home. I sent it to Huffington Post, and what most people do is when they get a hit like that, they'll talk themselves out of it.
Right.
They'll say, well, but I don't know anybody at Huffington Post. I don't have a whole list of articles. I'm not a published author, blah, 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 blah. But in taking the action from that intuitive hit, that this is important that I mention, CJ, is that an intuitive hit comes neutrally. There is no emotion attached to an intuitive hit. Mm-hmm. It's like traffic intuition, turn left, turn right. It's just like your GPS. There's no emotional charge.
Interesting.
And a lot of people they get their intuitive hits screwed up because they say, oh, it came and it felt so awesome and it felt so big and I knew it was going to be the next best big thing for me. And I say, nope, whoa, reel it in. Because it's coming from that broader intelligence that doesn't have any attachment, good, bad, or otherwise, to the outcome. There is no emotional charge.
Wow, that's a huge one. Because I do think people think like, Huffington Post, like you would be getting something like that as your intuitive hit. It was like, Huffington Post,
Yep.
something like that.
Exactly. That's perfectly put, because they think that the angels are going to come down and the
Yes.
harps are going to play and the sky's
Yes.
going to open. Nope. When I'm looking for a missing kid, my intention is, let's find Jamie. Where's Jamie? And then I might get a vision of a Ferris wheel, or I might smell certain plants, or I might hear sounds, but there's no emotional charge behind any of it.
And when I think back at mine, they're of that same ilk, kind of. Okay, maybe you should do book reviews. Like, oh, okay. Or, they just come as like little fleeting ideas that I think, where'd that come from? I don't even know where that came from, but it's just, and it's not coming when I'm thinking about, like, what should some great business ideas be? Like, and sometimes I do come up with some things then, but it's usually like it was, was like the walking the dog scenario. I was driving around, I'm like, oh, I should do, book reviews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I encourage people to always have a voice recorder or a notebook, because your best ideas are going to come when you're not prepared.
Right.
And most times, a lot of my men clients say they get them when they're shaving, because they're focused on something else.
Yes.
So keep a journal handy and write everything down. And the more out there, the better.
Yeah.
Because if you're focused on, let's just say you have a goal as an entrepreneur, let's say to make $100,000 this year. You're into, and that's your focus, and you're asking your intuition to guide you to the $100,000 solution. Your intuition is going to guide you to $100,000 solutions that are different than what you've done in your $50,000 life.
Yes, exactly.
So you have to have a certain degree of courage, and you have to be able to let the logical mind go, because you're not going to have a track record.
Right.
So, but you also need to know where you want it to guide you. Right. A lot of people will say, I'm just going to let the universe guide me. Right. And I say, whoa, put the hands on the wheel of your life, because if you just say, I'm going to let the universe guide me, then what's going to happen is you're going to experience guidance that's based on the law of averages and the law of the collective consciousness and the law of your old subconscious programming.
Oh, fascinating. That's really good advice, because I've heard that all the time. I'm just going to let the universe guide me, versus what you describe in your book is come from a peaceful place and set a really clear intention. That would be a different, and that's what you're talking about. That's what you would prefer people to do, is to set a clear intention and then ask what's coming from. Otherwise, like you said, then you're kind of, there's a whole bunch of other factors, and you may not get the information that's the best one for you.
Exactly.
So we have Simone Wright, who we're talking about her book, First Intelligence, Using a Science and Spirit of Intuition. Thank you so much for being here. What great information.
My pleasure. It goes by so fast. I could talk about this for days.
We'll you have like so many great tips, I think, that are just practical things that people don't know about. So I'd love to have you on again to talk about some of the practical things in here. Just even the simple one where it's just not like this, Huffington Post, it's like, Huffington, that's like a really simple, concrete thing. So again, we're talking to Simone Wright, author of First Intelligence. And so what's great is on your website at Simone, S-I-M-O-N-E, Wright, WRIGHT.com, you have a lot of the meditations on CD. So folks who, may not be able to get the book for whatever reason, get the book. But my favorite parts actually are the meditations, which you actually have online.
Yeah.
And they're pretty reasonable, like $24, I think they were.
There's you can get the foundational ones. It has the two sort of starter meditations for $12, and then there's sort of the whole kit and caboodle for $24. There's four. There's walkthroughs on there.
Yeah.
But it's important. It's important. It's great if you can read the book, start there. But it's also important because you want to be able to bring your energetic field into alignment, and having somebody walk you through that meditative process is really helpful. Yeah. So, lots of fun stuff on the website.
Cool. So you can find it on SimoneWright.com. Thank you again for being here. And next week we're going to have Carol McLaughlin talking about creating a joyful life. Make sure to tune in every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks so much. Bye.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show, or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.